Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Niblick, and I am the Senior Librarian of Adult Reference and Teen Services here at the Monterey Park Bergamara Library. I'm so glad that you could join me today as we would like to highlight several titles in our paperback collection that are ideal for taking to the beach, reading by the pool, or just hanging out at the airport. So let's go ahead and get started and note that this presentation will be recorded and posted to the City of Monterey Park's YouTube channel. So in the contemporary fiction genre, the first book that I thought it'll be a bit of a heavy read, but it's something worth taking time to read as it is very passionate, but also very enlightening. This is called Shuggie Bain, and it's by Douglas Stewart. So a little bit of a synopsis about Shuggie Bain is that it's about a young boy who is actually named Hugh Shuggie Bain. And the story starts with Shuggie's childhood during the 1980s, growing up in a rundown public housing in Glasgow, Scotland. Now, during this time, Margaret Thatcher's policies were pretty harsh on the working class in Scotland at the time, and it actually put a lot of husbands and sons and breadwinners out of work. And literally, waiting in the corner was the largest drug epidemic in Scotland. If you're familiar with the movie Trainspotting, it definitely highlights the issue that was going on in Scotland at the time. So when readers will meet Shuggie's mother, and her name is Agnes. She loves her children, but she is also a little bit of a burden because she spends most of her time daydreaming about all the things in life that she wants, including a brand new house, and she likes to order things on credit just to make her life a little bit better because her husband, unfortunately, is a taxi driver who spends most of his time with other women. So but Agnes refused to let that show, so she continues to live her life. She does her hair and her makeup, and she wears all of her jewelry. But the problem is that she actually drowns her sorrows in alcohol. And unfortunately, her alcoholism is so bad that her older children ended up leaving Shuggie behind to care for their alcoholic mother. The thing is that Shuggie wants so much to be a normal boy, but in the end, he does everything that he can to try and care for his mother. And when secrets start coming to the forefront, he has to make a very devastating choice to either become the boy he wants to be or deal with his mother. Again, like I mentioned, it's a little bit heavy, but it paints a very vivid picture of what life was like in Scotland and around that time that a lot of us don't know about, especially in regards to British history throughout. Most of us know 1940s World War II and post that. It's very enlightening. The story actually won the 2020 Booker Award, and it was actually a finalist for the National Book Award. So these are just a couple of honorable mentions, some other books that might be worth checking out in the contemporary fiction category. The next one I want to give a little bit of synopsis on is called Welcome to Pineaway Motel and the Cabins. So this is about a woman named Henny, and these motels and cabins have actually seen better days. But unfortunately, after meeting an untimely end while crossing the street, she's not going to let death stop her, and she's going to live her life fully. But the problem is that her friends and her family need her the most. So after the funeral and after the last little bit of casserole is eaten, Henny's kind of just hanging around. So not sure what to do, she realizes that she can actually help return the Pineway Motel and Cabins back to their former glory, because if they don't do something, her dear friends are going to lose this business, and she can't let that happen. So this particular book is actually hailed by Frederick Backman, who wrote The Man Called Ove. He states that Katrina Bavald, who's the author of this book, talks about her characters like they're your own best friends. So this is a light-hearted story about friendship and about what one woman will do for the one that she cares about. The next title that would be a fun read, or not a fun read, a good read this summer is Strum by Nancy Young. This particular book is very evocative because it is entrenched in a lot of the author's experience when it comes to sociocultural knowledge. This story is about a man named Bernard, who is a deaf woodworker, and he is actually drawn into the old growth and the rural forests of Quebec. So it takes place in Canada. So summoned by the spirits of his Iroquois and European great grandparents, he actually witnesses a colossal 800-year-old cedar literally fall to its feet. and he almost loses his life, salvaging a portion of that tree to actually craft two guitars worthy of the music that he hears. And after 2 centuries and 4 continents, this tale of family spirits and music paints upon the world's largest canvas an intimate story of enduring love and how the mysterious forces that divide us can bring us together. And this is written by Nancy Young, who, as I mentioned, has a very rich background in exploring different parts of the world. So this is definitely worth looking into if you are into stories that provide um, a lot of information about cultures you're not aware of. Um, Mind you, I wanted to mention that most of these items are available in print, ebook, or e-audio form. And the last of the contemporary fiction titles that I would recommend is called The Last List of Miss Judith Kratt by Andrea Bobatis. So in this particular book, it focuses on a very hard-hit town called Bound, South Carolina, where literally all people can really do is bury their secrets close to home, and others will just end up running off and off somewhere hoping to find a better life. So Judith Kratt was our main character. She inherited everything her family had to offer, from everything from a pie safe to a copper clock and the secrets behind a murder nobody knows of. So she's lived in the Carolina house quite a while, and this is the home that she lives in, and she also maintains it with the help of her companion, excuse me, named Olva. But when her sister suddenly returns, her sister Judith, um, she basically wants to make all the inventory of everything that belongs to them and to sell it off, and is determined to include the skeletons the Kratt family had hoped to take to their graves as well. So this particular book goes back and forth between, and one evening, particularly in 1929, Judith pieces together the devastating influence of the Kratt family on their small South Carolina town, learning that the effects of dark family secrets can last a lifetime and beyond. So this is definitely a little bit of a nail biter for those who like a good thriller. So the next group of books that I would love to present to you. This one is called The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. If you've read The Nightingale, this one is just as good as the other one. And in this particular one, again, it's another historical fiction, because this is the historical fiction genre. This one, it is about a family, and it takes place in 1974, where a man named Ernst Albright had just come home from the Vietnam War, but he's changed. He's very different, as war has did to a lot of men back then. And after losing another job, he decided to move his wife and his daughter to live off the grid in a very rural part of Alaska, which is almost America's last true frontier. His wife, her name is Cora. She will do anything for her husband, even if it means falling into the unknown. And unfortunately, their 13-year-old daughter is caught in the middle of her parents' passionate but very stormy relationship. But she's has no choice, and she's just hoping for the best. But in the wild of Alaska, the Albrights find a fiercely independent community of men, of strong men, and even stronger women. And the long sunlit days and the generosity of the locals make up for the newcomers' lack of preparation and the dwindling resources, because obviously he didn't really think it through, and they didn't have a lot. And unfortunately, as the winter starts approaching, and they have month-long winters where it's nothing but darkness, Ernst's fragile mental state is deteriorating rapidly. And soon the problems that they thought were bad back home, they start to double. And as their small cabin is covered in snow and literally blanketed in 18 hours of night, the daughter, her name is Lenny, she and her mother have to pretty much fend for themselves. This particular book was a #1 New York Times bestseller and a People's Book of the Week, including BuzzFeed's Most Anticipated Women Fiction of 2018. This book is about 2 or 3 years old, and Seattle's Books to Look Forward to in 2018. It is a beautifully written book by a great author. A couple of other titles that are worth reading in regards to historical fiction, if you have not had the chance to read some of these. The first one I really want to talk about is The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This story is about a young slave. Her name is Cora, and she is on a plantation in Georgia. She's even an outcast amongst her fellow Africans in the fact that, she's on the cusp of womanhood where greater pains awaits. And so when Caesar, a slave who had recently arrived from Virginia, urges her to join him in the Underground Railroad, she seizes this opportunity to escape with him. And what's beautiful about this story is the concept behind the Underground Railroad that the author has done, where it's not just a metaphor. It is really all about the engineers and conductors who operate the secret network of actual tracks and tunnels beneath the southern soil. Like, he really does an amazing job just depicting all of this. Like, you can actually see the tunnels that led the Great Escape for a lot of slaves back then. And Cora embarks on this harrowing flight from one state to another, encountering strange yet familiar parts of her own world at every stop, and she meets some other people as well. And again, Colson Whitehead has been praised for his ability to recreate the terrors of the antebellum era, where he weaves in the saga of our nation from the brutal abduction of Africans to the unfulfilled promises of the present day. So this, The Underground Road, is both the gripping tale of one woman's will to escape the horrors of bondage, but also powerful meditation on the history that we all share. It's very relevant today, and I highly recommend it. The next title that is definitely worth reading, but we're going to go back a little bit farther. Rather than going back from Civil War, we're going to go back to ancient days. So this is called Circe, but it's by Madeline Miller. So in the house of Helios, the god of the sun and the mightiest of the Titans, a daughter is born. This is the description. Her name is Circe, but she is a strange child. She is not powerful like her father, and she is not alluring like her mother. So instead of hanging out with the gods, she turns to the world of mortals for companionship and discovers that she does possess power. She possesses the power of witchcraft, which can transform rivals into monsters and menace the gods around them. And these monsters, most of you may, if you've studied Greek mythology, you will know that she has been able to tame wild beasts and basically turn them into famous figures that we know, including the Minotaur, Daedalus, and the son of Icarus, the Medea, and of course, Odysseus. But there's actually a lot of danger for Circe because she literally stands alone. And when she draws the wrath of both man and the gods, she's finding herself pitted against one of the most terrifying and vengeful of the Olympians. And to protect what she loves most, Circe must summon all of her strength and choose once and for all where she belongs, either with the gods or with the mortals she has come to love. So again, this is a great story with some great characters. And it's got a lot of suspense, and it really is. Even though it's about the Greek gods, there's a lot of things that we can draw on our own experiences, from family rivalry to intrigue, love, loss, and with the celebration of basically an incredible world of women. So again, these books are available either in print, ebook, or e-audio. I highly recommend it. And lastly, in this category, the one book I would like to recommend is a very interesting point of view. So from the glittering balls of the 17th century England, to the dangerous intrigues of the French court, Laura Sullivan brings an unlikely heroine turning on its head everything that we have been told about the Three Musketeers story. And their ultimate rival in the story is nothing but other than Milady de Winter. So the language it's smart, it's witty, and does a great job depicting what life was like back in the 17th century. But it's a very interesting tale about a character that kind of doesn't get her due credit in Dumas' novel. So I highly recommend Milady by Laura L. Sullivan. The next genre I would like to of recommendations that I'd like to recommend is in the mystery genre, and this one particularly is The Institute by Stephen King. Now, if you are a fan of Stephen King, this is a very interesting premise in the fact that it revolves around children, young children with special powers. So basically what happens in the middle of the night in a small town, Luke Ellis's parents are murdered and he is kidnapped and he wakes up in the place called the Institute. Now, the room he wakes up in, and it's very similar to his, but beyond that, there's no windows, and beyond the doors are other doors of children just like him who have been kidnapped. The thing is that Luke, like these children, have very special powers like telekinesis and telepathy. And some of the other kids that he meets are named Kalisha, Nick, George, Irish, and even a 10-year-old named Avery Dixon. Now, they are actually in a part of the Institute known as the front half, but anyone who is not in the front half is in the back half, and it literally is like what one of the kids called a roach motel, where you check in but nobody checks out. So this is a pretty sinister place, and it is led by a woman named Mrs. Sigsby, who basically her and her staff spend day and night practically torturing these kids to extract their powers from them. The thing is that if the kids go along with what they demand, they get special treats like tokens to the vending machine until they're no longer needed. And if they refuse to work with them, they are dealt with harshly. So as more children come in and more start in the front half and they move to the back half, Luke becomes more and more desperate to try and get out and get help. But the problem is nobody's ever left the Institute nor survived telling the story of leaving the Institute. So this is actually was hailed by the Boston Globe as as psychically terrifying as his older work, The Firestarter. And with spectacular kid power of it, the Institute is another winner. It's creepy and touching and horrifyingly believable all at once. So if you're looking for a good nail biter and mystery as to why they're doing what they're doing, this is an excellent title to read. So some other recommendations I'd like to make. We have The Midwife Murders by James Patterson, and this is actually the main character. Her name is Lucy Ryan, and she is a midwife. And she obviously she works around pregnant people, and it's nothing new to her. But when two kidnappings and a vicious stabbing happen on her watch on the University Hospital, which is actually in Manhattan, New York, her focus abruptly changed. So rather than being a midwife, she figures she decides that something needs to be done, and she's actually fearless enough to try. So as things begin to swirl around as to why these are happening, the Russian mafia is brought up, to even an underground adoption network. So Lucy, who basically ends up teaming up with a very skeptical New York Police Department detective to solve the case. But the truth behind all of this is a lot scarier than Lucy had even bargained for. So if you're a fan of James Patterson novels, this is a great alternative to some of the other series that he's written. Another title that's got another interesting premise is called The Poison Garden. So this is about a young woman who basically grew up in a cult called the Ark, and one day she wakes up and about over 100 members of the Ark are actually dead, and she's basically left alone in an isolated part of Wales. So this is taking place in the UK. And so anyone that was left behind has to kind of fend for themselves. But for 21-year-old Romy, there's our main character, learning to live in a world that she was taught to fear is going to be extremely challenging. More importantly, extremely challenging, especially now that she's carrying her first child. So, but she is determined to find the rest of her family and to help protect her baby. But she realizes leaving her old life behind is not going to be easy, especially outside the wall of the Ark, where the real evil is growing. So this is actually another pick by the Boston Globe as a brilliantly plotted page-turning novel from one of psychological suspense best writers. It's actually available in print and worth checking out. And last but not least, in this particular genre, we have The Lady Takes the Case. So this is by Eliza Casey. This particular cozy mystery takes place in England around the 1900s, where Danby Hall is the only home that Lady Cecilia Bates has ever known, and that is our main character. So despite the rigid rules of her growing up with her mother, who is a countess and who's really desperate to marry her off, there's an actual agricultural depression that is sweeping the countryside. So the her particular family possession of the hall is actually in jeopardy. And one of the ways that the family has decided to try and keep the hall in their family is to marry off Cecilia's brother to an American heiress. Her name is Annabelle. But as this pursuit continues, which eventually ends to like a massive party where the actual heiress arrives, somebody dies, and they died after drinking something out of a glass that was actually meant for Annabelle, and nobody knows what's going on because the whole point of this party was to try and keep the house in the Bates family's possession. But not only does it seize even more scandal, Cecilia herself decides to take on the case to figure out how, why would somebody want to murder Annabelle, but more importantly, just try to sabotage their success. So she ends up teaming up with her maid Jane and surprisingly, a very smart cat named Jack. So when they find a stash of the poison that has been discovered, there's two possibilities of why someone would want to kill Annabelle. There's either a resident Danby snapped and tried to kill the arrogant Argus, or a threat is coming from another guest who basically does not want the Bates to keep the family home. So this is, again, it's a cozy mystery for anyone who's looking for a little bit of intrigue, but also who loves cats. So I'm a cat fan myself. And in the next grouping of books that are highly recommended, we have something called Love Lettering. And this is actually about a young woman. Her name is Meg Mackworth, and she's got some amazing hand lettering skills as the planner of Park Slope, which basically she designs all of these custom journals for a lot of New York City clientele. She also has another amazing skill, which is reading the signs that other people miss, especially in relationships. So knowing there's an upcoming marriage of someone she knows, Reed Sutherland and his Polish fiance, as they were doomed to fall. Oops, let me help this person in. As they are doomed to fail, which Meg was able to intertwine this failure into some of the lettering that she did, and she didn't think anybody would spot it, except one person did spot that sign of failure, and that was nothing but the pattern-obsessed fiance, Reed Sutherland. So about a year later, Reed had actually tracked Meg to find out how she knew that his meticulously planned future was about to implode. But with a looming deadline and a bad case of creative block, Meg does not have the time for Reed's questions unless he can help her find her missing inspiration. So as they gradually open up to each other, they try to ignore this amazing connection that is formed between them. But sometimes these signs are irresistible and indisputable. So urging Meg to heed the message Reed is sending, irresistible, urging Meg to heed the messages Reed is sending her before it's too late. So this is another fun read that is, if you're a big fan of romance, you're gonna like this one. The next set of honorable mentions or other recommendations that I would like to present. This next one is called The Enlightenment of Bees by Rachel Linden. So this is about a 26-year-old apprentice baker. Her name is Mia West, and she basically has her life planned out like most of us did in that time, which is to be owning a Craftsman cottage in Seattle and a job baking at the Butter Emporium. And her first love and her boyfriend, Ethan, by her side. That all changes when Ethan decides that he needs space. So basically, Mia's plans are crushed. So not knowing what to do, Mia joins her very lively roommate, Rosie, on a humanitarian trip around the world, which actually is funded by a reclusive billionaire. And along with them is a famous grunge rock star, a Rwandan immigrant, and an unsettling, attractive Hawaiian urban farmer named Kai. Mia and Rosie embark on the adventure of a lifetime. So as they move from the slums of Mumbai to a Hungarian border camp during the refugee crisis. Mia's heart is challenged and changed in astonishing ways she never knew she could have ever imagined. But as she grapples with how to make a difference in a very complicated world, Mia realizes she needs to choose between a life she thought she wanted or the life that was unfolding before her. So this is definitely a romantic adventure across the world, and it explores what it means to find the sweetness in life where our greatest passions meet our greatest need. So this was actually hailed by the #1 New York Times bestselling author Debbie Macomber, who said, "I comb through pages with delight, and this book is going to cause a real buzz." So the next book that is worth checking out if you are a fan of romance, it's called Would Like to Meet You by Rachel Winters. So this is about a woman named Evie Summers. So it's her job to basically find out everything. And if she can't convince, so she actually works in the film industry, and if she can't convince her film agency's biggest client, Ezra Chester, to write the romantic comedy screenplay that he owes producers, she's going to be out of a job. The problem is he thinks rom-coms are unrealistic, and he'll only put pen to paper if Evie shows him that it's possible to meet a man in real life the way that it happens on the big screen. Unfortunately, Evie is a little bit of a cynic, and she doesn't believe in happily ever after, but she'll basically do anything she can to save her job. So it means she's going to reenact iconic romantic scenes in public. So we've got things like spilling orange juice on a complete stranger. We've got leaving her number in all the books all over London to see who calls, but with a little help of some of her friends, which are Ben and Annette, the adorable father-daughter duo who keeps witnessing her humiliations. They're actually parent-child. Evie is determined to prove she can meet a man like Sally met Harry. The problem is can this workaholic who has given up on love ever find her true love? It sounds hilarious, and it sounds like it's definitely hilarious, and it's a lot of fun for those who are looking for something on the lighter side of something of romance. So the next title that I would like to recommend is called Boyfriend Material. It's by Alexis Hall. The main character, his name is Lucas O'Donnell, and he's famous for reasons he doesn't like to talk about. He is actually the child of a rock star and a woman who split when he was young, and he didn't really know his father because his father was in and out of rehab for about 20 years. The thing is that his father's making a comeback, and which puts him back in the public eye. The problem is there is a very compromising photo that of him that literally could ruin everything for him. So he's trying to do his best to kind of clean up his image. So he has to find someone to have a nice, normal relationship with. And he finds it in a man named Oliver Blackwood, because he's nice and pretty normal as they come, but he's a lawyer and he's a vegetarian, and he's never ever had any scandalous kind of life. So in other words, he's perfect boyfriend material. So apart from being gay, single, and really, really in need of a date for a big event, Luke and Oliver kind of have nothing in common, but they're going to make it work. So they strike a deal to be publicly friendly, or in other words, to be fake boyfriends, until after all the dust settles around Luke. So the whole plan was that they should go their separate ways and pretend like nothing ever happened. But the problem is as they're fake dating, it can feel like it's real dating, and you start to get used to someone. So they start falling for each other, and you'll have to read the rest to see what happens in Boyfriend Material. So as a nice segue into the next selection of books, it is June, which means that it is Pride Month. So that was an LGBT romantic comedy. I would like to introduce another set of books that are great to learn more about the LGBT community and Pride Month. So the first book that I would like to recommend is the Stonewall Reader, which is actually edited by the New York Public Library. So June 20th, 2019 marked the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, where it's the most significant event in the gay liberation movement and a catalyst for modern fight for LGBTQ rights in the United States. So it actually draws from the New York Public Library's archives as a collection of firsthand accounts, diaries, periodic literature, and articles from LGBTQ magazines and newspapers that pretty much documents the years leading writing up to the riot. And this anthology actually shines a light on the forgotten figures who were actually very pivotal in the movement, such as Lee Brewster, head of the Queen's Liberation Front, Ernestine Eckstein, one of the few and out and African American lesbian activist in the 1950s. Here's another set of books that are worth mentioning if you want to learn more about the LGBTQ history. This is actually, the first one is Beyond Magenta. It's Transgender Teens Speak Out. This is a very illuminating and very uplifting collection of stories. Author and photographer Susan Cucklan met and interviewed 6 transgender or gender neutral young adults and used her considerable skills to represent them thoughtfully and respectfully before, during, and after their personal acknowledgement of their gender preferences. So we've got portraits and family photographs and even candid images that augment the emotional and physical journey of each youth, of what they've had to experience. And with each honest discussion and disclosure, which some of them can actually be kind of either incredibly happy or incredibly heartbreaking, it's completely different from the other because every teen has different, young person had different family dynamics, living situations, gender, and the transition these teens make is in recognition of their true selves is brilliantly documented in this particular book. And it was actually a 2015 Stonewall Reader medal winner, or honor book medal winner. And the next book that I'd like to recommend, this one is called This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson. This is how the book is described. There's a long-running joke that after coming out, a lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans person should receive a membership card and an instruction manual, and this is the instruction manual. So inside this book, readers will pretty much find all the answers to the questions they have ever wanted to ask, which include sex and politics, hooking up and stereotypes, coming out and more. And it's incredibly funny and candid, but it's also it has an uncensored exploration of sexuality and what it's like growing up LGBT, as it includes real stories from people across the gender and sexual spectrums, and not to mention there's some really funny illustrations. And this was actually hailed as one of the Guardian's best books of the year. And Patrick Ness, who is a well-known writer, said the book every LGBT person would have killed for as a teenager told in the voice of a wise best friend, frank, warm, funny, and useful. Now, this particular title is only available through Overdrive. Hopefully, we'll be adding it to the collection at some point. And last but not least, we have Call Me By Your Name by Andre, I want to say it's Akimen. This particular story is about a sudden and powerful romance that blossoms between an adolescent boy and a summer guest at his parents' cliffside mansion on the Italian Riviera. Each is unprepared for the consequences of the attraction. So when during the restless summer weeks, unrelenting currents of obsession, fascination, and desire intensify as their passion and tests the charged ground between them. So recklessly, these two verge towards the one thing they both fear the most and may never ever fully find again, which is basically total intimacy. So this is definitely an instant classic. It has been said to be an instant classic and one of the greatest love stories of our time. So this particular title won a Lambda Literary Award for fiction, is a New York Times notable book of the year, Publishers Weekly and Washington Post Book of the Year, as well as a New York Magazine Future Canon selection, and is a favorite book of the year in the Chicago Tribune and the Seattle Times. And this particular title is available in print, ebook, and audio. So if you like what you see, you are more than welcome to place a hold on any of these titles by visiting our catalog. The web address is library.montereypark.ca.gov/catalog, or you can call the Adult Reference Services at 626-307-1368. And I did want to mention that the library is open. We are available by appointment only. So if you want to place an item on hold, you're more than welcome to come and pick it up in person, or you can still pick it up through contactless checkout. Again, you can make an appointment through the library's website to speak with a staff member for more titles like this, or if you just want to say hello. I also wanted to mention that starting on Tuesday, June 8th, we are our 2021 Adult Summer Reading Program will be launching, and this year's theme is called Reading Colors Your World. You can actually sign up for it on June 8th at montereypark.beanstack.org. So thank you so much for coming to today's presentation. Hopefully you found a couple of titles that you could take on vacation with you or just to read from home. I wish you happy reading and hopefully to see you at the library soon. Thank you.